Okay, we're on here.
We are reconvening the meeting. We are hooked back up to our YouTube feed. Thank you all for your patience. Our first agenda item is we have to reappoint the Director of Public Safety for 1 year. Could we have a motion for that, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? That person being who, Jim?
Joe Brzezinski, that guy.
No, Public Safety.
Public safety.
Oh.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
Somebody ahead of me.
I thought it was being funny. Serious.
You're a safe guy, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrach?
This is for
For
Number
public
7.
safety.
Number 7.
number 7, and it's named.
It's
Mayor
Rick Bain.
As that, yes.
Okay. Ms. Walton?
Yes.
Ms. Govic? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile? Dr. Wong? Yes.
Next, a motion to confirm the reappointment of Joseph Brzezinski to the position of treasurer for 2 years.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrach?
Yes.
Ms. Weldon?
Yes.
Ms. Govic? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wong? Yes.
All right, we are withdrawing from the agenda this evening the Architectural Board of Review appointment, number 9. Next, we have a motion to confirm the reappointment of Howard Katz to the Planning Commission. We have a motion, please. Mr. Katz, by the way, is here this evening. Hello, Mr. Katz.
How are
Professor
you?
Katz. We have a motion, please.
So,
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrach?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Govic? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wong? Yes.
Thank you for your continued service,
thank
Professor.
you. It's a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Our next item is ordinance 2023-20, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement for grant funds for Belgrave Road septic conversion. Don, you want to remind us of what this is, please?
Yes, we applied for funding through Regional Sewer District for installation of sanitary sewer on Belgrave Road. It's based on the age and condition of the existing septic systems that are failing over there. We did get funded for about half of the cost of the project. And I don't have the number. I think
The
it's
grant was around $850,000.
$840
It's
or
in the minutes.
$880.
The size of the grant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is.
$844,000.
And just from a commitment going forward standpoint, this authorizes the mayor to enter an agreement for grant funds. And what's kind of the next step on this?
The next step would be to move forward with a resolution of necessity to go ahead and prepare the improvement plans towards the design.
At what point, just remind me, process-wise, when we determine the amount of the permissible assessment, when does that come into play?
The estimated assessment is, that will be after the plans, specs, and bid documents are put together, and we'll do the final estimate when they are ready.
Okay. So I'm just thinking about total project cost, and my goal is to make sure that total project cost is within the permitted amount that we can assess. So we're not subsidizing the project. And so we'll know that, or have a good sense of that after you do your work on design
Correct.
and have preliminary bid information.
We'll have good probable cost.
Okay.
Don, I had a question from a Belgrave resident today. When are we anticipating the start of this project? Can you have a timeline, just a
Yeah.
rough estimate?
Yeah, I would say design in 24, and then the hope would be to build it in 25.
Great, thank you.
Okay, this is on for second reading tonight. We didn't pass it last time, primarily we had no ability to suspend for it. I'd entertain a motion to suspend tonight.
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrop?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godin? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
And the motion for the adoption of 2023-20.
So moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Ms. Atrop?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godin? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Next, ordinance 2024-01. This is for the providing additional appropriations and transfer of items. Joe, you want to take us through this?
Thank you, Mayor. Yesterday, Sheila sent out to everybody, the attachment. On page 2 was the little cheat sheet that came with the attachment. But basically, items 1, 3, and 4 relate to the next page, as I discussed in the verbiage about grass cutting. Simply put, 2023 was the 5th year of our grass cutting contract with Davey Tree. We spent about $57,000 with them. We knew we were getting a hell of a deal, so we actually upped the budget to $70,000. And the 3 bids that came back, the low bid was $125,000 and change. And the second bid was slightly higher, but at least was in the ballpark. Third bid came in like at $257,000.
Who bid on this, Joe? Is it just large, well-known
Jim,
companies?
do you have that with?
I would say, the one company is, the low bidder actually does the same work for City of Solon. So they cut their right of ways and they cut some areas like that, so I wouldn't say you probably know the names of the companies, no.
But they're,
It's not Davey Tree, Davey did not bid this year. So it's, one of the, one's from Oakwood Village base. I think actually 2 are Oakwood Village base. And then the other one is way out, past Manor. So they're coming in.
in the pool of, talk me through the bidding process in terms of the pool of people who bid and how they got noticed. How did you,
We had Don,
It's public bid.
public,
it was public bid,
same way we do all these other projects.
and we got a total of 3.
We got 3, yes. We tried to get, we made Davey aware that their contract was up. Called them again to remind them that we are going out for bid. And talked to another person through them and they just never bid, so found that they had no interest, I don't know why. So the 3 companies that picked up the packages and they went through the regular process of how much the top 2 came out, walked the areas, checked it by acreage. They basically charge by acreage. So, and they figured, they went through their system of what we normally do, cut grass, trim, below the leaves, do all, and there's different price points for all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
In this process, do smaller companies pick up bids and bids on this? Because, I mean, this is kind of commodity work, if you will.
Right.
There's no-
What happens is we put it in it's accessible for anybody that subscribes, which is all companies just about.
Yeah.
They're looking for those particular tasks, so that it's really well marketed to people to bid on.
Yeah.
So they may not pick it up. They can view the document online to feel if they even want to order the actual bid document. So a lot of them looked at it, kind of.
And where is it posted online?
It's a subscription based. It's a construction based.
It's a Dodge?
It's a Dodge, yeah.
And do we know when it was posted?
we posted it early December. I think when did we post it? Late November.
Late
Ago.
November,
to go to, bid, go out to bid, and it came off the second week of December, maybe?
Do we know if our bids were in line with what other cities are seeing? Because
I believe so. Our bids, we did have that one that was, the three bids were 125,440, 141,099, 259,101. So we felt that
Two were close.
two were pretty close, you know, considering the amount of acreage that they cut here.
it's just such a
It's just the same
tremendous
question.
variance from, sorry, go ahead, Jim.
The system, Dodge, what's it called?
Dodge reports, yeah.
DODGE.
Ah, Dodge,
Yeah,
okay.
and they, what they do is almost every contractor belongs to that network. We provide that free to Dodge so they can post it.
Yeah.
And anytime we put a legal ad in, they automatically request our stuff. So it's a very good way to get the information out there. So
So I'm just saying, like, local landscapers who do a lot of work in Pepper Pike. They're cutting hundreds of yards. They're not bidding on this though.
Some may and some may not. Yeah, some of them are too small to
Different
do.
equipment.
Different equipment needed, you know, larger mowers. They'd rather do all the little ones because it's, you know, it's a big commitment to cut grass here.
I'm just adding headcount just for this. I mean, it's kind of commodity work. It's not specialized work, right? That's what I'm resisting this because I'm questioning whether, you know, we pay 125 for a year and see what happens to next year bids rather than hiring someone.
Or it's a 5-year
It
contract.
was a 5-year contract. We didn't, well, it was a 3-year contract with 2 1-year extensions.
Similar, same as last.
Same as the last ones. Brand same.
And what is this person doing when it's not cutting season, that person we'd be hiring? What is their job?
Cutting season generally ends November, so that's when we start ramping up for winter.
Are
So
they
they'll be here to snow plow.
permanent? But we have
So
another
we have
person
work.
plowing?
Pardon me?
We have another person plowing?
Can we have
perhaps?
another one? Yeah. We could
We have
always.
plows? I don't know.
We can always use that extra person.
Well, I know, I gotta call the last week.
Would this give, so if we were to do it in-house, I'm assuming it would give us greater control over the length and time between cuts? Because I know that we've had discussion, especially Gates Mills Boulevard, the length of that grass. I know residents talked about like bees in there and their dogs and stuff. We would be able to send this person out to do it on a more frequent basis if we desired.
Our thought process is to cut once a week, every week. And over the 5 days that the employees are here.
And just so I understand, so it would be City Hall, the park, Morgan Park. Do we do all the circles? All
We
the circles,
probably
Gates Mills?
do 80% of the cul-de-sacs.
Okay. And manpower, like how many man hours does it take to clear all of those areas in the city? Is that like a 2-day job to do, like, I don't mow the grass, my husband does, so.
It used to take us, when we prior did this, you could do Gates Mills in a day and a half
Okay,
with a wide mower,
okay.
which is what we were,
Then we're
that's in there
requesting equipment.
to purchase the equipment. And then you have the rest of the city, you're about 3 days, 3.5 days, depending on the length. You know, obviously, in May, the grass grows like crazy.
Right.
In August, it doesn't grow at all. So you kind of take the average. We're watching what Davey did. Davey would bring 6 employees. They'd be here for 1 day, possibly 8 to 10 hours. So you figure that's 48 to 60 hours.
Okay,
And we work, 40-hour work weeks. So 2 guys, that's 80 hours. Full-time one, part-time one.
equipment wise, so when we had like an overgrown property, those delinquent properties that we had to mow, were we asking Davey to do that? Or
No, we did that all in-house.
So you did
We
that?
have 2 mowers currently.
Okay, like riding or?
Yeah.
Okay,
2 riding mowers.
so this would just be an additional
Yes.
equipment purchase?
And we were
to that.
counting on using those mowers and then replacing one in year 2. And I believe we have in year 4 replacing the other one.
And when you added the all-in cost for hiring this, it'd be, what was that number? Is it on here?
Those, the cheat sheet, I mean, at the end of a 5-year period, We're
Just
gonna-
what's the annual cost?
well, on the low end in year one, it's 132,000 and change. On the high end, it's 146, but that includes the 44,700 for the mower. After that, you're looking, in year two, we would be replacing one of our smaller mowers that we currently have.
Mm.
So there's 15 there. So really, without the mower, you're looking at 90,000 and change versus 104, depending on the healthcare situation, as I explained.
90,000?
We still have to count the mower. I would-
So what, but just, so variable costs, just the salary, wages,
Well, year three is a good example. Year three, it's 93,000 to 108. And that's without any mowers in
yeah, so the variable cost is 90 to hire this person to do this?
there. Mhm.
And we could get, and then you add the mowers, and we could get the contract for 5 years at 125
A year.
a year.
Right,
You're saying it's
so,
90,000 a year to hire this person? What am I missing? I'm
right,
missing-
but at the end of 5 years, we're gonna save anywhere from 47,000 over that 5-year period to $122,000. We could do it for 3 years. We would anticipate probably at least one full-time person retired within those 3 years. We could go out for bid again and use the smaller mowers to keep like we have now, but we could always sell the bigger mower. But it made no sense for us to pay more than to go out and hire this person.
So for 3 years, it's 375 with the contract, right?
Well, 133 a year,
125 a year?
133.
That was 125 a little bit.
He only gave for grass cutting. We also have they fertilize around City Hall,
Okay, so what,
and they also do the spring cleanup.
so 399?
Yeah.
Okay, and then the cost of equipment, person and mowers over those 3 years, just the 3 years is, the total is. I missed the cheat sheet, sorry.
No, it's right here. You got it.
Go ahead.
That's- Yeah.
374-ish. For 3 years.
On the high end,
On the high end, if I do my math.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough savings there to bring someone in-house.
chances are we're gonna get somebody on the low end.
But even with that,
And don't forget, we're also losing the additional snow removal person for the winter.
but you wouldn't do that by itself. You'd only do that as,
No, I wouldn't hire someone just to do snow removal. for the
Right.
winter. That's why we're picking up that. There's an opportunity cost to not doing the guy.
You
We're
anticipate your
using
retirement in the next few years?
snow
You
plow
anticipate your retirement in the
aspect.
next few years?
Definitely.
Well, to your point, over a 3-year period, on the high end, we would save 25,000. On the low end, we would save 68,000. 68,000 over 3 years is worth it, huh?
but there's a lot of risk with hiring. Again, it's headcount is what drives everything here on costs. It's 80% of our cost is headcount, right? It's always been that way.
But like I said, within the next 3 years, we've got at least one guaranteed retirement, if not 2. And could be 3.
How does that play into your calculus though? I'm missing something.
It doesn't. If we decide we want to get out of the business, it's not like we're gonna have
Oh, I see
to
what you're
lay
saying.
somebody off
You would
to
slot them,
attrition.
you would
We
slot
just-
them into that.
Yeah,
So I have just a question about this winter business, because of the seasonal nature of the grass cutting. Do we hire part-time people in the winter to snowplow?
no.
Oh, we don't, okay, so we would just be increasing the service by having this guy plow snow when
Right.
there's no
But
grass.
would we be
And to your
increasing-
point, those costs are already built in, because I did an
Because that's
annualized
something I've
cost. I
been
didn't
asking.
do it.
No,
Yeah.
I understand that. So the grass cutting, let's call it half of this, and the rest of it is enhanced plowing. Just call it half, just to make it easy.
Yeah, I would say 2/3. Cause we're starting in March with spring cleanup a lot of times,
Yeah, okay.
April.
So I have a question about the plowing, the detail. So if we're saying we'll have another person who could plow, but but will we have more service on the street, more people plowing, more starting earlier? Or is it just going to be shifting people around at different times? Because that's been my concern for a couple years now, that, you know, I think that we're maybe cutting it a little close on the bad days. We had one recently, and I'm curious if this is going to just improve our scheduling, or if it's actually going to improve people on the street, based on how many plows we have, the equipment, how we schedule, that action, if there's actual impacts.
You could, what you're doing is protecting yourself against, I think, you know, because you don't know who's gonna show up on a day. Get a sick person, everything yesterday, for example. Yesterday morning, we had 2 guys here, they get here at 4 AM. They called 2 more guys in by 6 AM. We were missing a garbage guy. So now we're low on labor. You always have just enough. I mean, we could always, what do? We stop picking up garbage to go
So,
somewhere.
like on a day, the day I got the text, let's see if I can find it. Well, it doesn't matter. It was maybe a week ago when we had an early snow, it was icy in the morning. It wouldn't have impacted that. I'm assuming we had full staff.
We
And,
did it, yes.
okay, and so it wouldn't have changed that situation. That would just be more plows on the street, just putting down more salt.
That would give us the ability to put more plows on the streets.
Do we have
If they're
more plows?
necessary.
But do we have more
Yes, we
plows?
have more
Oh, we
plows
do
sitting
have more
there.
plows that could have been put out. Okay, that's my question.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a close
I can't
case.
remember what day it was.
I guess we have flexibility. We're stuck
Right,
with,
and-
we're stuck with the mowers then, right? If We
Well, we would
outsource.
end up selling the mowers. I mean, mowers last a long time.
When we stopped doing lawn maintenance, I believe that was 08, maybe. We still have 2 mowers from 08. We haven't bought new mowers at all. But those 2 mowers that are there, they were relatively new. So we kept those mowers. We sold the one big game mower that we had purchased
Yeah.
to the city of Columbus, I believe. And, so, yes.
But when we sell them, we
got to deal them out.
don't get that much. I
We
mean,
got $30,000 for
and
them.
it costs, what do they cost?
The mower we're looking at is 44.
Okay. that's okay.
The John Deere, like what we had, is 60.
Oh.
So we got
Okay,
half.
We got half.
And it
We
was
don't
probably
want to
less
get in the
than we
business
bought.
of doing that. I mean,
Kathy?
Since there's still snow on the ground and the grass isn't going to grow for a couple of months, could we look into the costs a little bit more for the bids for grass cutting? Maybe another month and see what Mayfield Heights does, because they have Batesville Boulevard that they have to get cut. Who are they using? Who are adjacent cities using? How much are they paying? And maybe give us like a month's more time to look into, since there's no grass cutting going on right now.
You think anything, it's a fair point. I think, will anything change? If you put it out a bid again, do you think is there any factor out there?
Well,
Talk
is,
to
yeah,
Davies
is
again.
there any cost to putting it up to bid again? Seeing,
We're not losing
some people that
anything.
didn't see it in Dodge see it this time.
It was the
We have time,
holidays
right?
too.
Yes, except for the fact that, you know, you have contractors that are trying to, you're talking about a project that's gonna take, is somebody that's gonna be here a day or 2 days. And a contractor may now say, hey, it's too close for me to.
They're filling out their schedule
They're
now.
filling out their schedules,
Yeah.
you know. When you'll start seeing people shoving stuff in your mailbox for grass cutting within a month.
And truly, I mean, we used to cut grass years ago.
And most of the grasses are cut.
Then we stopped cutting grass and we went through Davy. And we saw how that worked. I believe Jim and his crew, in talk with them, have a pretty good handle. But if council doesn't want to take the chance, we'll up the appropriation by, instead of 70 grand, we'll ask for $65,000 more. And we will just cut the grass by contract. We were just looking to save the city money. And to that point, augment in the wintertime.
Well, I think the intention is, well, I don't know if anybody, this is the first time I've ever heard anybody respond positively to augmenting in the wintertime, except Jim. I mean, both Jims actually, but, I guess the question is not that council doesn't want to save money, because obviously that is our intention, and that's why we're asking these questions and having this conversation. The concern that Jim, I think, is expressing is that big picture, we might put ourselves in a bad position where we're actually costing the city more money, because the more people we hire, sometimes that's problematic. I think that's the summary, not that council is
But with
versed in
attrition,
saving money, that's.
with
that's
attrition,
pretty much
we're in control of
a
that.
big part of our
We
job.
can be.
Yeah,
Mike,
so that's the risk mitigation is attrition.
Right.
Well,
Well, what was the rationale for us subsidizing, like, putting this out, that we weren't cutting the grass? Like, what happened?
It was a lot cheaper to outsource it.
It was.
Yes.
Well, $57,000 a year.
Did we lose any employees with that? Did we cut the service department when that happened? I obviously wasn't on council at that time, so.
I think we did, if I remember.
I think
So we
did too.
reduced.
Yeah, or
Through
we,
I think we actually
we didn't
saved a
hire
lot of
them
money
on through attrition.
doing it.
Yeah, it was
Well,
definitely
it was
cost
such a
saving.
low amount, it had to be saving money.
Right.
It was
the
cost saving money.
The fully loaded cost of hiring an employee, it's a lot.
Well, and we've considered all of the employee costs in this, like
Yeah.
their
Fully loaded.
retirement, all of that is out. There's no,
Over-
no,
Those
no
are
stone,
low-
stone left unturned is what I'm asking.
Those are loaded numbers that you're saying.
Okay, okay.
I mean, and that's how we do our projections, because we know those are real costs.
keep in mind that the person that you lose through attrition within the next 3 years is going to be a higher rated employee than the ones that you're hiring,
Mhm.
because they're the upper tier employees already.
Right.
So there's another 25% savings per, you're
I,
saving that gap.
I think it's worth the risk. I don't see a big downside to this. If this isn't working out and we have attrition, then, we can put it up to bid next
That-
year.
That helps me a lot.
But I think that these costs are gonna go up, but we had a great deal, and Davey probably,
Regretted it.
Which is why they didn't bid again.
ate some costs, and that's why they're not doing it again.
They
It
bought
is-
the business the first time around, and they're not defending it.
It's just a good question why they didn't bid again. I mean, even, they didn't have to bid the same amount again. They could have been the high bidder, but they didn't bid again. That's just an interesting, who knows? I mean, I guess we should keep our eye on it. That's to your point. We can keep our eye on it and we could look at it again in a year or two.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering if we're getting a high bid this time, somewhere in the.
This way, we're not locked into a contract. Next year, we can make the decision again if we have to. And I don't see a lot of downside in this
Yeah.
and some possible
No,
upsides.
there's not a lot of downside.
We have lots of use for the employee otherwise.
And Tony, to your point, the decision point would be when somebody's getting ready to retire, because if you're gonna make the move, that's the perfect time to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This gives some flexibility, not high downside, not much downside. I think I support it.
So that's most of the numbers that relate to the appropriation ordinance. The only other number on the appropriation ordinance for the 2001-55 was based on the law director's contract. But all the other numbers relate to the grass cutting.
All right, any further discussion? All right, we have a motion
So I'll move it.
to suspend.
Just suspend.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrach?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godick? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Motion to adopt 2024-01.
I'll move it again.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Atrach?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godick? Yes. Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Next, we will look at 2024.02, which is for the appointment of the Director of Law and authorizing entering into an agreement. Mr. Byron, after consultation with the council, it's we'd like to see a modification of the contract where it would reflect that in the event of your unavailability, that you would have an assistant law director or an alternate available to attend meetings. Hopefully, this would be a person we can be introduced to prior to the need of the person. And is that something that you can make happen?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I know in the past that process just sort of went to the wayside last year, so we appreciate that, and we'll just write that into the contract. Can we adopt this tonight, subject to, we'll get that written into the contract, and won't object to that? Okay,
I think we can pass it subject to that clause being added.
okay, that's fine. Can we have a motion to suspend 2024-02?
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Ms. Atruk,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
yes.
Ms. Bodett, Mr. Lemay,
Yes.
Mr. Gentile,
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt 2024-02, subject to its modification to reflect the alternate / assistant law director position.
So moved.
Second,
Roll call, please.
Ms. Atruk,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman.
yes.
Ms. Bodett.
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentile.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we come to ordinance 2023-17, which is dealing with it's the committee ordinance. I think have there been modifications since council?
Very minor. They're redlined. There's a document attached that is redlined. And you can see a couple changes Tony picked up on page 1. A missing and online, item B on page 2. And a change in wording in item E on page 3 from subsume to incorporate. That's it.
I would urge council, Jim, for you to delete the phrase, put a period after the word committee, and delete the end of that sentence, which shall incorporate the existing beautification committee. To be honest, I don't even know what it means. The committee, QUAC committee, is simply a group of volunteer residents. They serve as an advisory to myself in the service department so far as plant selection. They actually do hard labor so far as planting things. I don't even know what it means to incorporate. If it means that somehow council believes it is securing the services of these people, that's going to be a separate conversation you're going to have. This committee is going to have with these people.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea.
I just see them as having overlapping missions. And that's my concept here, whether I'm very flexible in the wording, but
I would get rid of the whole entire phrase.
what did the rest of council have a view on that? I just saw as making parks beautiful and making the city beautiful as kind of overlapping missions.
Right.
And that's why I wanted to combine the two.
Right, and I'm not trying to speak for the individuals who participate in that effort on behalf of the mayor's advisory committee, but I certainly can't commit any one of them to be incorporated. And, from time to time, it may not be called beautification. I'll certainly continue to seek out people's advice regarding these issues. So I don't know what it means to incorporate
I
loosely.
meld them together. Is what I mean.
I know, I just don't think there's anything to meld, Jim. I really don't.
I don't have an opinion one way or the other on that, so I can go either way. But if we leave it in, I think we need to spell incorporate correctly, because it's not.
Good catch, Tony, another one.
Tony.
I left that just for you, you know that.
Yeah.
Anyone else have a view? I'm not.
I mean, it does seem like similar work. I don't know, and I know there's some money that funnels through to that committee, not a huge amount of money. I mean, it's a smaller role than most of our other committees, so I have a little bit.
Just do a parks committee. committee?
The committee really doesn't receive money. The committee makes recommendations how we should spend a fund called beautification. It makes recommendations to the service department where how some of their efforts can be directed and actually get out and educate some of our workers and working alongside of them to get things properly in the ground and those sort of things. But I
How many members?
just don't think that the council wants to be in a position where it thinks it's incorporating those individuals who volunteer their time
No,
into a
no,
council
I don't
committee.
think anybody thinks
Because they
that.
have no fun. They are not the people. It's overstating. They're called the beautification committee. Yes, it's my advisors that help with the service department. It's not a separately funded unit. The money goes to the service department. That's where the money's
I mean,
going.
they sort of direct it, I guess.
Yeah, they give advice as to how to direct, how they should do things, but there's nothing to incorporate here. It really doesn't make any sense.
Why
Can
don't
you
you just
get
use
pushback from members of the beautification committee? Like, is that where, because I think
I
that it
would
would be
predict they
lovely
will.
to join them all together.
And I
They're all working towards a common
encourage,
goal.
I encourage this council committee to maybe solicit their advice and participation. But I think that, yeah, these are volunteers. I don't know that any one of them would relish the idea that we were
Well, and I
incorporated.
guess.
My
well, no,
volunteer time
it's
is
more
just
the idea of
incorporated
how do
into
they get on
something.
the-
Forget the word for a second.
Yeah,
Combining their missions. That's what really matters. So
I would get rid
I don't
of
want to
this.
offend anyone with the word incorporate.
I think you're offending people. I would get rid
Okay.
of the phrase.
And I just want to make sure that, you know, everyone in the community feels that they have access to get involved.
Right.
And
Is this
so-
a sort of, you know, formal, not in terms of, you know, like the other committees are, but is it a set group of people, you know, or is it more loosely, you know, if you want to sort of jump in and get
Yeah.
involved in this specific project, so it's like a more
Right.
casual structure?
Right.
Then to me, it almost you just need to not call it a committee, and I feel like you solve a lot of problems. You know, if that's where people are gonna get hung up on whether or not, if we're taking the time to outline this new committee document, then I feel like you kind of solve the problem of, you have this more casual organization with, you know, who consults and, you know, is
But they're
working with that.
volunteers. It's like saying we don't have a garlic mustard committee. These are people who organize, you know, when we have a garlic mustard pull, you know, they're out there knowledgeable, you know, helping residents who show up. This is how you effectively pull out garlic mustard.
Right,
So you don't
you
leave
wanna
half of it in the
maintain
ground
that
and the
expertise.
seed pod.
Because they're
going all
already
over.
called a committee. They are
Well,
the
forget,
beautification
maybe it was a
committee. So
conceit.
if we're gonna
that they
talk
wanted
about
to be called a committee.
semantics,
Forget
semantics
they're a committee.
regarding-
They're not a committee.
And by the
that's
way,
what they're
kudos
called.
to them for the work
Yes.
they do and pulling the,
Oh,
I
nice.
Sure.
pulled the garlic mustard with them. It is a thankless task. It's like you're making a drop in the bucket. And the things they do are tremendous. So it's not to make anybody not want to do that hard work, because it's amazing.
Don't think of them as a committee. They are a group of people who organize together to help out this city. There's nothing to incorporate, is what I am saying,
Fine. We'll call it the Parks and Beautification Committee. Is that okay?
period. That's fine.
Okay.
I think it's a council committee and you can call it whatever you want.
I'm okay. Anyone else? Good. All right. So to change that, put a period after the word committee in 1 and 2 and delete from which through committee. And with that, any further discussion?
If I could, since this has been introduced and read, I would recommend that you may actually make a motion to amend the ordinance
Very good.
as introduced, so it becomes, it'll be,
I will move to amend the ordinance by eliminating in paragraph E, The words which shall incorporate the existing beautification committee, period.
Second.
Can I get a roll call?
You need a motion in a second.
They had-
You
you have
did
it.
Lemay,
Yeah.
Gentle,
They did it.
Lemay,
They did it.
Billy.
Jim,
Oh, okay.
Tony,
Yeah, roll call then.
Ms. Atrop,
Yes.
Ms. Welborn.
Yes.
Ms. Godich. Yes. Mr. Lemay.
Yes.
Mr. Gentil.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Make a motion to adopt ordinance as amended, ordinance 2023-17.
So moved.
I'll
You're
second.
second.
Jim moved it.
Jim moved
Oh, you
it.
moved
Okay,
it?
you're
Oh,
second.
I'll second it, sorry. Oh, we made the motion, gotcha.
We're used to Mayor calling those.
Yeah, I was waiting for someone to call for it.
Yeah, usually the mayor used to do some stuff. I need to stay home.
For a roll call?
No, we're not good for a roll call yet.
Okay,
Now it's time for discussion.
okay.
I continue to have some very significant concerns over this ordinance, council. And I'm going to reiterate some of what I said before, just so that it's all brought forward on a record. I don't know that this is really right to vote on this evening, actually. And I appreciate that there have been modifications to amendments.
Are you talking about,
We're talking about 18.
Oh, no.
we have to vote on
Vote
17.
on
I
seven.
thought we voted on something.
We didn't
did
vote.
vote on-
We had a motion to amend 17.
Oh, you're right.
Oh,
Yeah.
both the clerk and I were
We're ahead.
mistaken.
I made a
We're
motion
in
to adopt.
17.
Yeah, we're on the committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
We're
was
still on
amended.
So this is a motion to adopt
Adopt
17.
17,
yeah.
Correct, all right, and there is a
Yes.
first and a second on that?
That's
Yes.
not that time.
Then let's have a roll call.
Ms. Atrop,
Yes.
Ms. Weltman,
Yes.
Ms. Godin.
Yes.
Mr. Lemay.
Yes,
Mr. Gentil.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Okay.
thank you.
I'm sorry, we gotta have both the clerk and the.
Okay.
Now we're on to 18.
Now we're on ordinance 2023-18.
Number 15.
Okay. Let's pretend I just said all that stuff right now.
Mhm.
I still have concerns about 18.
Do we need to move it and second it and then ask
We
for
can-
comments?
Discussion?
Go ahead.
Well, let me just talk. Yeah, I appreciate that. 18 is a solution in search of the problem, in my opinion. It does something very dramatic so far as the way our planning commission would operate so far as its relationship to the city council. And the law director at our last meeting already expressed, and I think he may need to reiterate tonight, his strong recommendation that this not be adopted. And in my view, when the original relationship was described, there are 3 residents, and there are 2 elected officials, the mayor and a council representative. The majority being the residents. I think that was with a lot of intent and purpose by our forebears, that they wanted this administrative task to be performed by a majority of residents. This is not a zoning change that occurs here. This is not a legislative body. This is an administrative body. And as such, it is something that becomes well-schooled and practiced in issues of due process, lots of different legal stuff that I'm not going to get into because I'm not really the guy qualified to talk about it. But what it does is change that relationship. The most important thing that it still does is that it basically provides council with standing to, on its own initiative, basically object and bring forward to a council level, an action by the planning commission. And then sit, having been the party bringing it forward, to sit in review of its own appeal of the action of the planning commission. I think this is just functionally messed up. We shouldn't do it. Because the optics alone are self-evident. Functionally, it creates terrible confusion, in my opinion, as to who is making, what is the purpose of a planning commission? If you're going to strip it of its unique administrative function to make these determinations regarding variance applications, lot splits or consolidations, conditional uses, those are the province of this administrative role that the planning commission serves. Now, the council is already engaged in the process as a neutral reviewing body, where it would sit in as a reviewing body of action of appeals brought by either the applicant or the aggrieved neighbor, if you would, so the other interested party who is standing to be objecting to what's occurring here. Council should not be part of that process. I understand or can maybe appreciate in a broad sense, oh, council may be dissatisfied with what the planning commission did. But that's an administrative act. Ultimately, the council sits as sort of a junior 2506 Common Pleas Court of Appeals to this sort of action, where it would be reviewing, was the action of the planning commission arbitrary, unreasonable, and capricious, so that the administrative problem can be resolved before parties had to get involved with going to a court. Okay, I think that serves a certain, judicial savings type thing, where it's less complicated for, something to get resolved at this level on that level of appeal. We don't have a board of zoning appeals here. Council is basically sitting as that board of zoning appeals for that appeal from the action of the planning commission. Here, suddenly the council is just in an inappropriate role. Let's say the council reverses, takes new evidence, and
Can't take new evidence.
That's the
okay,
point. It says that's it.
let's say that the council comes to a different decision. Is it and there's commentary made, a discussion made, and Byron can get into this better than me. It just confuses a record terribly for that 2506 court. It's just an unnatural position that council is contemplating putting itself into here. Those are my feelings about it. I don't think we should go there. I think we should respect what generations of prior councils in this city, going all the way back to the charter, the way they think this thing ought to function. Steve, do you have any thoughts about this?
I have made myself clear before that I think this presents a significant element of risk to the city's ultimate decision. If council ceases to act as just an adjudicative body and acts essentially as a prosecutor to bring forth cases that it thinks have been wrongly decided, how can it possibly sit in judgment after it's already made a determination that some decision is worthy of additional review? And I don't see, number one, there have been that many decisions that people have freaked out about. I don't know actually of any that are worthy of that. The other aspect of it is it puts me in an awkward position, because I would have been advising the body that made the decision, and then now another body, which is acting as prosecutor and judge, is seeking to impose its judgment on the situation. And I've already worked with the planning commission, advising them on whether or not their decision is legal and that sort of thing. if the council reaches a decision that's different than the planning commission, you know, that again presents significant risk to the city. And in my opinion, there is a significant due process issue here when you take a separation of powers situation where you have a legislative body that has arrogated to itself additional administrative authority that it didn't previously have, and then exercises it on a private party who has property rights. I see all kinds of opportunities for mischief under this scheme. So again, I'm going to repeat myself. I highly recommend that you not adopt this ordinance.
Let me respond to all that. So first of all, this is not stripping the planning commission of any authority here. My concern here is that, and I think this will rarely happen, but if the planning commission makes a decision that is not in the best interest of our city, it's not always going to be the case that there'll be an aggrieved party. As we talked about last time, unless you live next door or across the street or very nearby, you have no standing. And if the planning commission, say one of the golf courses becomes available for development, and a development is variances or conditional use permits are put in there, approved by the planning commission, that create other issues, I don't want to be without the authority here at council, as an elected representative, accountable to the voters, to say I have nothing to do. I can't stop what's going to happen here because I have no authority and there are no aggrieved parties. And that can happen. I don't think this will be invoked often. It's a bit of insurance if something, I don't expect to happen often, but it's a bit of insurance. And we're not worse off to have that ability in the event some decision that is that far awry is made by the planning commission. As the mayor mentioned, or Steve mentioned, many cities set up Board of Zoning Appeals, which is a whole separate administrative function. But to Steve's point, staffing that and creating that for the one or two times this is going to happen over, I mean, I can think one or two times over my tenure here this has happened, where it was something like, I said, wow, I really don't like that decision for its broader impact on the city. I wish there was some vehicle at which that we, council, could have a chance to review it, really understand it, and in those cases, make a different decision. So because of that risk, it's not a something that I think is going to happen frequently, but there's a possibility, because there would be no aggrieved party to take any action unless you live next door or right nearby. I think it's a bit of insurance for us, for the city council, all accountable to the voters. The 3 resident officials on the planning commission are voted for 6-year terms. They're not accountable to the voters. They have a 6-year term. That's a long term to be put in that position. Once again, I respect their service. I've always respected their judgment. I think they do a great job, but there is a chance if they could do something that would be detrimental to the city, and I don't want to have this council be powerless to review it at least and understand it. And so that's why I think this is important. And with all the risks that have been pointed out, it's better to have that power. So we have it, even if we never exercise it for that one time when we think we need it.
I have
And
a
all
hard
I'm
time
suggesting is that one time that you need it is most likely going to be the time that there's going to be a large audience. The argument that council was influenced by the mob and was not acting independently is going to weigh very heavily with the judge. This is exactly why you have non-elected officials making these decisions with the participation of 2 elected officials, but not the majority, is to insulate from the political aspect of a determination of property rights by an individual property owner. And if no immediate neighboring property owner, you can't just conjure up a harm to the city, because each case will be judged on its own merits.
Well, I think the harm, though, to Jim's point, and I fully support his comments. The harm is in the application of the part, well, some of the things he said, in addition, the ordinances that are in place. It is not, it took some effort. I will tell you, if anybody wants to try and listen to the meeting where you spoke about this, unfortunately, the recording isn't good. And I had to get a separate recording. It was hard to listen to, but the gist of that conversation had to do with having basically a new hearing on new facts and creating a new record. And that is not what this is about. That is not what this is imagining. And so I think it is good to have something like this in place, because it is correct that we have some large, for example, parcels of land that would not necessarily have an adjoining landowner, and there could be significant impacts. And as in our role as a council, it's incumbent upon us to be looking for that concerning situation and make sure that we're ready to address it, particularly since, as Mr. LeMay just stated, there are people on this committee who are appointed for a long time. I sit on that committee. I hold tremendous respect and like all of these people, but that doesn't mean that at some point in time in the future, it could be many years in the future, that process could go awry. And we're not contemplating any particular situation now, which I think makes it kind of a cleaner ordinance. We're contemplating a gap in what we see in our process.
If there's not an aggrieved party, why would there need to be an appeal? By definition, if there's not an aggrieved party, why does anyone else? I understand what you're saying in terms of like a big project in a golf course or whatever. There's someone in that situation that's going to qualify as an aggrieved party. But if the planning commission has the authority to make that decision, we have no reason to expect the planning commission to go off the rails. I'm more inclined to worry about the process parts that the mayor and the law director have raised as concerns being a more realistic scenario than having the planning commission go off the rails, no aggrieved party, and council is like the backstop.
Well, I wouldn't say that there's no aggrieved party per the definition in place.
Right.
But in the law, certainly there are many cases where there is a person who stands as the aggrieved party. I mean, that's common, that's typical. There are representative people.
And those folks have the right to appeal a decision that is adverse to their
Yeah,
interests.
and so this, I guess this is addressing the issue that the definition of aggrieved party is limited to such a small, as Jim stated, small, narrow group of people who live in very, very immediate proximity to this piece of property. You can't live 3 houses down and be an aggrieved party.
Well, that's my concern, because that idea comes from case law. And you are giving council standing to bring an appeal essentially to itself, and putting yourself in the standpoint of an aggrieved party when you aren't. And you're talking about some hypothetical harm to the city. Each of these cases are decided on their own facts based on specific circumstances. And if facts don't apply in other circumstances, the relief that's granted may not be applied.
I think we're talking about not the facts being revisited, just to clarify again. We are not talking.
No,
about
that's not what
revisiting
I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that any given decision by the planning commission is applicable to that property. And if facts in another circumstance on another property are different, it may not serve as a precedent for that decision. I'm not talking about council going back and getting into the factual record. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the impact on the city is limited to that specific property based on the facts that are brought before the planning commission. And if an aggrieved party says the planning commission got it wrong, I think it's bad enough that a legislative body, and this is in the abstract, not you guys, nothing personal, but if a legislative body that is subject to political pressure is put in a situation where not only can they decide the issue, but go out and hunt an issue, it's really bad. And I can't say it any more clearly than that.
Council, listen, this is not simply a policy issue that you're considering here. This has a somewhat profound legal consequence. Howard, would you mind if I called on you?
Well, I'm sitting here, I guess.
We have, we are fortunate that we have an expert. Professor Katz teaches this. This is what he's been a law professor for more than 40 years now, 40 years or so. Sorry, Howard, that's not there. And I think maybe you can't dictate to council what their policy decisions are made, but I think if you could give us some background as to what this entails, what this is about. It may be what Steve has said, it may be broader. Do you have anything you
Don't
could?
put him in a bad spot of giving us legal advice, you know,
No, I don't want you giving, he's not,
because
he's not here to give us legal advice.
Teach it like a class.
because it's, yeah. 'cause it's
Yeah,
not
no,
good for him.
first, yeah, no, I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not licensed, having returned to Ohio and to our lovely house in Pepper Pike. I am speaking as a professor who has taught land use in at least 3 different states, and talking about the general principle and the general pattern that Pepper Pike and almost every city in Ohio, in North Carolina, where we moved back from, in other places as well. I apologize to those of you who already went to law school, if you're going to be hearing something you already may have learned. I apologize to someone who's still in law school, who hasn't had me as a professor. As some of you may know, the conventional land use and zoning system in the United States comes from basically the pattern that was set in Ohio, because by coincidence, the leading case in the United States that established the principle that zoning was constitutional happened in Euclid, Ohio. It happened that Howard Metzenbaum's uncle was involved in that case. A lot of other important people were involved in that case. The basic idea was that you have zoning, like the zoning map that's sitting behind the council right now, that sets out a general set of principles that govern land use in a community. And then if there is some issue involving the application of that zoning to a particular property, the most simple example being if you can't build a house because the setbacks, the shape of the property doesn't allow a proper setback on all 4 sides. You would then grant a varying of the zoning, which is why these are called variances. And those variance decisions, historically, traditionally, and in almost every jurisdiction in the United States, are considered to be administrative decisions. The reason that this all happened is because in the 1920s, the U.S. Department of Commerce, headed by Herbert Hoover, who we all think of as the president who led us into the Depression, but at one time was considered one of the great men in American history, they promulgated what is called the Standard Zoning Enabling Act, which set out this idea that the basic idea of the zoning map was a legislative decision, and the application of the zoning map in particular situations would be considered to be an administrative decision. Why is it an administrative decision? Because it affects one property owner and the adjoining property owners, because it allows for the application of due process, notice, hearing, the opportunity to cross-examine witnesses, a written record, those sorts of due process issues that have been alluded to. It involves an administrative body having a certain expertise and developing over time a certain pattern of how decisions are made. In granting a variance, and particularly the vast majority of the decisions, at least since I've been on the Planning Commission, have been what are called area variances. And the standard for area variances is set out in state law and local ordinances. And an area variance means that a golf course can't turn into an office building because that's not within the scope of what a planning commission or board of zoning appeals, depending what it's called in a given jurisdiction, does. And so what you have is a legislative decision to have zoning, and you have administrative decisions that apply that zoning in individual cases and where aggrieved individual property owners say they have undue hardship or practical difficulties in using their property in a certain way. They ask for administrative relief, and as has been mentioned, that administrative relief can be challenged if it is denied by the property owner, if it is granted impermissibly by the adjoining property owners. Administrative bodies like planning commissions, or in those cities that have boards of zoning appeals, do not have the power to change the nature of the zoning map and to allow impermissible uses in given zones. They have the power to grant variances to the application of zoning. This is what I taught when I taught in North Carolina. This is what I teach when I teach in Ohio. This is what I taught when I taught in Illinois. This is standard stuff. I know there is at least one jurisdiction in Ohio that happens to be nearby that recently allowed some version of what is being considered. In all of my years teaching this subject, and this is, don't hold me to this, I never researched this because there was no reason to. I have never heard of a legislative body having the kind of power that this proposal embodies. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong. As a practical matter, larger communities like Euclid, where zoning started for all practical purposes, that have all that industrial property, all those business properties, they do not see the need to allow a legislative body on its own motion to review what an administrative body has done. That doesn't mean they're right or you're right, or they're wrong or you're wrong. What it means is that this issue just hasn't come up. And as I say, I've taught this in 2 of the major cities in North Carolina. I've taught it in more than one major city in Ohio. It's just not something that local governments feel the need to do. That doesn't mean that city council can't do it. And the legal issues I leave to the law director. I'm not talking about legal risk. I'm not talking about those sorts of things. I'm talking about the practical aspect of how boards that are administrative in nature administer the larger policy decisions that are reflected in the zoning map.
And the reference you mentioned was to Willoughby Hills, of the nearby community?
No, Chagrin Falls.
Chagrin Falls, okay.
Thank you, Professor. I refer you that way instead of Howard because that was very professorial. And I appreciate it.
Well, and you're fortunate, normally in class I would have a seating chart and I would be calling on people at random. But here, in deference to the superior power, in deference to
I sat in that class recently, it's so much more relaxed. You guys are nice now.
Yeah. So most of the students say.
So, Council, and thank you for indulging my asking Howard to do that, because I wanted you to at least see the framework of how this works, this process that you're contemplating engaging in. So when you couple that though with Steve's couldn't be stronger recommendation against doing such a thing for a lot of law practical reasons.
Let me respond to that.
Yeah.
So, with all the objections, we're no worse off to have this power. We may never exercise it, but we're no worse off than being naked with no power.
And I do find it
With no
notable, yeah.
ability to stop something that has gone awry.
You mentioned Willoughby Hills a second ago. Let me offer something and let me throw this out there. Rather than sitting as an appellate body, the council of the city of Willoughby Hills under their charter, and then the case law that I sent to you indicated that council by ordinance can take a decision of the administrative body and say, we don't think that's right. We're going to engage our own counsel, and it's always a separate person, the law director who's been advising the planning commission, and take an appeal of the decision as an interested party. And that's the way it's been set up. And the CC Bar Sahara case that I sent to you says that it's permissible by charter or ordinance enacted under charter authority.
And I would rather not.
6 level?
It would, council would feel so strongly about it, it says we're going to court.
That's this case
That's
here.
what that is.
But that revolves having to go to court and
Yes.
litigate this.
Yes.
I want to stop it before that, or at least have a shot at it, so that we can have a council review it.
You're going to subject the city to greater risk of doing it that way.
The greater risk is having the ability to do nothing.
No, because that's not accurate, Jim. When you say that council is not, under this latest iteration, taking in any more facts, that means you're simply council would be doing a legal review of it. And if that standard is simply, what is the standard? Is it unreasonable, arbitrary, capricious? What is your standard? And then it's the same standard that you have right now when you hear a non-self-initiated appeal. I'm thinking out loud here a little. So that's no different. And they're going to be aggrieved parties. If something is so amiss below, why is it the position of council to be telling residents, oh, we don't like the resolution that you two have about your property. It's your property. We feel that as, the elected officials, we can introduce ourselves into your issue and make different decisions. Is there going to be all new due process being issued to people? This is just more complicated than you guys are.
That spin of it just being residents is not necessarily accurate, because we also have broader property owners. Develop things like that it's not, so I just want to make sure that that's clarified.
Well, they own property owners.
Property owners, but not
Property owners,
necessarily
not necessarily
residents.
Property owners
So-
is a better phrase.
And the other thing this ability gives us to do at council is we can also send it back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So there's a chance to avoid litigation by saying, here's our concern about the decision you made, and voicing that. And we have a chance, just like we do with an aggrieved party, to send it back down to them and request reconsideration based on factors. Again, avoiding litigation, not having to go to court. So I think this is a better step than having what Willoughby Hills did in the case that Steve sent me, and that the Ohio Supreme Court affirmed that Willoughby Hills may, representing the city as a whole, sue its own planning commission to overturn their decision.
This is such a slippery slope though, because if you have the ability to just, bring something up on appeal because you didn't agree with the decision, there's no cost to you to do that, to put it on the council agenda.
Sure there is. The cost is we're accountable public elected officials.
Sure, of course.
Responsible. And again, this is, to me, this is a rare insurance policy against something really going awry. Well, for protecting the citizens, the residents of Pepper Pike. So
Right.
the Pepper Pike Golf Club goes bankrupt and is open for development. Hundreds of acres, right? And the developer comes in and the planning commission approves something there. Right. And council has no power.
Why should, but I guess I don't understand why council should have that power. That's what the planning commission is for. That's their job.
And if
They're entrusted with that job.
You're saying no neighbor's going to appeal that decision?
Yeah.
Well, that's the issue. There may not be an aggrieved party. Because aggrieved parties are a very narrow class of people. And I want this to protect the city, the whole city.
And people act like it's not a heavy lift to show up at this meeting when you have a neighbor doing something that you don't like. I've received over the past few years several phone calls about people who feel intimidated by neighbors, feel uncomfortable, don't understand the process, didn't realize, they got a letter, they didn't know what it was, it's sort of a nondescript, somewhat looking letter, don't look at their mail, whatever the reason is.
I'm intimidated by my neighbor.
Yeah.
You are describing a method of violating the rights of the property owner who received the administrative relief to cross-examine, otherwise contest what's being said by the person who's whispering in your ear, seeking special favor. It's just everything that you're saying makes this worse and worse from a due process
And
standpoint.
by the way, we almost failed on one case that came up, and it was fairly innocuous, although it could have been significant. And only because I recognized that more property owners were adjoining, did we have to come back a month later and revisit that happened to do with something on Pepper Creek and the configuration of the property. So in theory, there wouldn't have been notice to about a half dozen property owners. There wasn't initially. And it was an oversight, and these things are gonna happen because of how property was developed in Pepper Pike over these years. So people own little slices and pieces of property. And there are undeveloped pieces in the middle, creeks, things that weren't contemplated as problematic when they were divided and maybe thought of as developable, and now they're not developable. But there are real possibilities that someone could not be aware. And we're just trying to look for that odd situation and make sure that we're protecting the community.
To the extent that somebody who is adversely affected by a decision does not receive a notice and opportunity to be heard, that person has the ability to challenge the decision. So, I mean,
That's expensive. They have to get a lawyer.
everything's
They're-
expensive. I mean, that's,
Really
I agree.
expensive, but when you get to that point, you see a bulldozer behind your house.
This is a much better process than having to go to court. It's flexible.
Well, you're going to go to court and you're going to lose with this process, just so you're aware.
This is fraud.
And I'm curious
We
about-
shouldn't do this.
I'm
The city of
curious
Willoughby
about
Hills,
what's happening at Chagrin Falls too.
the city of Willoughby Hills got approved by this Ohio Supreme Court.
Yes, in a completely different process than we're proposing
But
here.
the point is, they were representing the city as a whole. They weren't an aggrieved party.
They
They got legislation that said, we can do this.
yes,
And that gave them standing to challenge.
yes.
I'm giving our
court.
city. pardon me?
In court.
I agree in court.
Not in a situation where you're bringing a case in front of you and then deciding.
You may not
If that
decide.
doesn't strike you as a violation of due process, I don't know what would. It's like going back to the days when the judge, the prosecutor, and the police officer shared the money from people who were seizing alcohol profits and so forth. That turns out that's a due process violation as well, when you're sitting in judgment of your own cases.
I disagree with that. And if no one has the power, we already lose anyway. Because the thing will get built.
I think if you're concerned with ultimate review, then adopting a process like Willoughby Hills, where there is a significant monetary cost, going to court and having an impartial body decide the case, we'll keep it at those, you're talking about these like extreme examples. It would act as a check on anyone, any of us, any future councils deciding to use this in a looser manner.
They still have the right to go to court. That doesn't change this.
No, I'm talking about the Willoughby Hills and council going to court, right? So that's a different situation.
But that loses all flexibility and expensive. Again, I don't expect this to be used often.
Sometimes due
I think
process is
a
expensive.
cost needs to be imposed in this.
If you want to have it done where you're not at risk for not only paying for your attorney's fees for fighting it, but paying for their attorney's fees because you violated their civil rights, my recommendation would be go with the City of Willoughby Hills model and take out the existing appeal to council. If planning and zoning decides something that you think is worth fighting for and spending the city's dollars because the city is at risk for this policy decision or whatever, put your money where your mouth is and do that. Don't have the game where somebody comes to a council member and says, I didn't want to complain, but he shouldn't be allowed to do that. And then four members of council,
I trust our council members to be better than that. So, you don't
I've
trust
seen
the
people
elected
come in the room and
officials.
start shouting at people and people change their opinions. I've seen it happen.
Well, I
Can I
saw.
ask, was the Willoughby Hills case, and did they pass that in reaction to a specific scenario, a specific instance, or did they pass it proactively, do you know?
No, it was passed, it was part of the original charter. There was concern that if the independent administrative body took a position that the policymakers didn't agree with, and my dad was the law director for that back in the day. But they wanted the ability to go to court and say, this isn't the way it should be interpreted. And the Supreme Court case was just about that procedural issue. And CC Bar Sahara sadly is no longer there. I don't know if anybody had an opportunity to go there. Years ago, people have to have hair like mine to know that they used to have serious rock bands there and very good music.
691.
They also had a serious problem with drugs and that, underage alcohol and that sort of thing. So that's why my hair. I
Well,
was
and
not.
then what about, we haven't really discussed Chagrin Falls' position on that. I mean, they're perhaps similarly situated to us in many ways. And if they're taking a similar position, I'm interested.
They're the only community that does it that way. And I would say the reason they should, again, they don't know what they're facing in terms of risk.
Well, they must.
Well,
I don't want to say that about our friends in Chagrin. I mean, I'm sure they know.
It's not a well-drafted piece of legislation.
Well, I
Was it
would
also
say that
recent?
also about our friends from Chagrin Falls.
2022.
I disagree with referring to it that way.
So I have a drafting point on this that Steve pointed out, so I want to first make a motion to amend what's drafted here. If I can refer you to, and I agree with Steve's change, actually, it reads better. So in the third line of Part B, put a colon after the word of at the very end of that line. Strike the word either.
Sorry, which line are we on?
And the third line of Part B,
Can you read it, Jim, just so that
I
I'm
can
keeping up
read
with
it.
you?
I'll
Do
read the
you
whole
mind?
thing. No action shall be taken on decision made by the commission except by a vote of at least 3 of its members, and any action or decision taken by the commission shall not be effective or final for the period from the date of such action decision till the last to occur of. I would insert a colon right there.
Okay.
And then in parentheses, a 1, striking the word either. And then continuing on, the adjournment of a city council meeting at which a quorum was present, strike the word or, replace it with the word and. And after that, put a 2, number 2 in parentheses. So it would read, the last to occur of 1, the adjournment of a city council meeting at which a quorum was present, and 2, 10 days from the date of such action or decision. I think that just reads a little more cleanly, from just from a drafting standpoint.
Yeah, and the other technical point that you need to do is you are only changing subsection B.
Mhm.
So what you want to do is in the part that says section 1, you say that existing section 1220.02B, and it should be meetings. My version says committees. I don't know which version. That should be meetings and
So
colon actions.
add a B after 1220.02 in
Yeah.
the section lead in, and then add meetings committee and meetings actions in place of committee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then also, you're only going to repeal subsection B. So you can just say existing subsection 1220.02B.
B below.
Otherwise, you're repealing the whole ordinance and just having a section B there. What I would ask is, at a minimum, I'd be interested in seeing this rewritten and really having one more opportunity to look it over just from a drafting standpoint.
I'm ready to move tonight with those changes, just like we did in the prior ordinance. We drafted it, including your contract, and didn't even see it rewritten. And
I
moved on
understand.
it. This has been for this is 3 readings.
Yep.
And I'm ready to have a vote for, first, I made a motion to amend it as per my comments and Steve's comments as reflected. Did I get a second?
I'd like to make one more comment before you do that. And I hope that council will not adopt this, but in the event that there's enough of you who want to reject the advice of our law director. I think that you should at a minimum have the requirement of a supermajority vote of council in order to bring this forward from the commission onto the council docket. At a minimum, it requires that. I think the whole thing shouldn't be adopted, but if it's even going to be considered, you should have at least a supermajority necessary.
I've made a motion to amend that. Let's deal with that first.
No, for them to bring it forward to council.
Well, it is third reading. It is third reading.
So I'm just making a suggestion. They've just made amendments to it. I'm suggesting another amendment that they should consider in doing this.
Can I get a second to my amendment request?
I'll second.
A roll call, Sheila?
Sorry, can I just clarify, right now, this is for the Part B?
Amending.
Part B,
Okay, great, thanks.
This is for the amendment.
it's for the amendment.
Thanks. Ready for the roll call?
Yeah, call roll.
Ms. Atrock?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godick?
Yes.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
I'm going to make a motion to adopt. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? Does anyone want to consider an amendment requiring a supermajority for this to be brought forward from the commission to council? If you're inclined to disregard the advice of the law director.
I would like to just clarify, as of now, and I'm sorry, this did not jump out at me when I read it, what is the requirement? A majority or one person?
Majority.
Majority, okay, thank you for the clarification.
Motion to adopt 12/20/18. May I have a second?
You did.
I second. Melanie
Second,
seconded.
right.
Any further discussion? All right, call the roll.
Ms. Atrock?
Yes.
Ms. Weltman?
Yes.
Ms. Godick?
No.
Mr. Lemay?
Yes.
Mr. Gentili?
Yes.
Dr. Wong?
Yes.
Thank you all.
Okay. Next, we have. We're not there yet. We had a planning commission meeting. You want to report on that, Melanie?
Sure, we had, it's kind of a unique meeting, we had two, termed under lot split and consolidation, they were actually lot splits. Or I'm sorry, no, one's lot split and consolidation for, well, I'll talk about the primary one. One was a house, it was a garage, it was actually, we had a previous lot split on it. This was a garage variance for the same house. It's a rather large house on a big piece of property that, even after the lot split, it's a rather large piece of property set back from, the street. It was recommended and, by George that this was appropriate to the size of the house, not visible from the street, not front facing. Very, very nicely designed and presented, and so that was approved. Now, we also had another, this was more unusual from what I've seen since I've been on planning and zoning. This was a lot split from the beachfront property. It was sort of complicated if anybody had been following it, because originally the applicant was beachfront, but the property then transferred after the meeting was set, and so beachfront was not a proper party. Then Heritage came, basically in the same position. This was something that had been part of their original agreement, apparently. And basically, Heritage was then splitting off a part of their lot, about 4.5 acres, to give back to Beach Brook, and for no additional amount of money, at least that's what we were told. I did ask some questions regarding the purpose of this because it's kind of a unique situation. Didn't really get any clarification about what the intent was on that property after the lot split. So that's pretty much it.
All right, let me clarify that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Originally, this was not part of what Beach Brook was purchasing. There was Beach Brook, apparently by its contract, had agreed to buy the Beach Brook property all but these 4 acres. That was subject to a separate deal that, as it was explained by the Beach Brook representative, to another adjacent property owner. Heritage had an option on that 4 acres in the event that that transaction didn't go through. It was explained the transaction did not go through. Heritage rejected exercising its option. There were apparently, as it was explained, closing requirements, closing deadlines for the Heritage property, so they closed the property. Since the Beach Brook had never successfully split the 4 acres off, however, they closed the property. Since it had not been split, the entire parcel was transferred to Heritage. Heritage had not purchased that additional 4 acres. So they had an agreement where Heritage was going to split those 4 acres back to, split it off and transfer it back to Beach Brook, since they hadn't paid for those 4 acres. And that's why it was with no consideration. And that's what was
And just for
explained.
clarification,
and
what
that's
I was
they did.
trying to state was that the property was sold legally from Beach Brook to Heritage. No matter what they intended on doing or wanted to do, or if they made a mistake, they sold the property and it transferred and it was reflected as such. And now they have to split off part of it and transfer it back.
Right.
And so that is what legally happened. Whatever the reasons were, or what deal they may or may not have had, I wasn't really, it doesn't matter. They sold the property and now they're transferring it.
Right. I was just reciting what they explained.
Yeah, and they did, they did explain that they maybe had a seller. It was unclear. There's no adjacent property that has the same zoning. And we did revisit the fact that this is zone D2 and the adjacent properties are zoned otherwise, and they have that awareness of that zone.
They had no plans for, no immediate plans
They
anyway?
said they had no immediate plans for this property, and I just wanted to make sure that everyone remembered that this was zone G2, and that it had been part of when there was a referendum at the community that they wanted to remain zone G2. But no, they didn't talk about it.
Do we know if it's up for sale or,
I'm sorry, say again?
do we know if it's up for sale or
No,
anything like that?
They made that comment.
Yeah, and there was they didn't really comment about what their intention was. It was all kind of little bits and pieces that you could gather. There was just somebody there for Heritage on their behalf. The school wasn't represented by, to my knowledge, anybody from the school. So we didn't actually meet those people.
All right, thank you. And department heads, anything you need to add tonight? I'll go to me. We've started our year. There's so the council's aware, state of Ohio, at the end of last year announced a $700 million capital fund of monies that it received from the federal government. and required any interested community to apply for money if it wanted to. So we applied for money, consulted with our state representative as to what they would support. Trails seems to be high on their agenda. So we put in an application for the state to pay for the second half of the Gates Mills project. If they're so inclined, we don't know if they're gonna grant that $1.5 million or whatever the number was. We also put in, not wanting to leave money on the table, a $350,000 application for any sort of playground improvement. It is not directed to a splash pad. It is simply recreational improvement of our playground facilities. That was also indicated a favored thing of state monies.
How much was the Gates Mills Phase 2?
It was about $1.5 million, whatever Don's estimate had been. He just said pay us for it. I inquired, would they pay for any of our recreational trail sidewalks? And that was not supported by the state. That would be an acceptable proposal from us.
Rick, was there no category for like sewers that?
They will not do sewers.
They will not do sewers. That's too bad.
Yeah.
That'd
That
be a
was,
great
that was the
infrastructure project.
first thing that I pitched that 6 ways to Sunday to do it. I said, you could fund a sinking fund for us, where you give us the money, and then we could use it to support residents as prices vary.
Sure.
We had no traction for that. To me, it makes total sense.
That should be their
But
first priority.
I thought it should
Yeah.
too.
I mean, they're setting these
Yeah, you
environmental
can't see
standards and we're doing everything we can, and they need to.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you having brought that up, because that was actually out of the gate, the first thing that I was trying to
Sure.
impress on them
Yeah.
to give us money for, and that they will not support.
When was this grant deadline?
And end of December,
December. And
second half of December sometime.
Mm.
And
Was
that was
part of
only
their
from the house.
meetings?
The house had advanced its date. There's like two separate applications. You had to tell the House people, you had to tell the Senate people, and they had two different dates operating. And the Senate one is in this year. And this House suddenly wanted theirs second half of December, so we had to pull the trigger on something.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's what's happening there. I don't really have anything else that I need to talk about this evening. Council, do you have anything more you want to talk about?
I just want to mention I saw the email go out about the centennial celebration, and I was just curious, because like where we're at with planning, if there's anything we can kind of notify the community for, any events that are going to be coming up, or who's involved in planning that, like what our outreach is in regards to.
Yeah, we'll be getting more of that out. I'm looking for a piece of paper.
Sure.
So,
Because while you're looking, I think when you're doing an event, and you know this very well, that, the more people that have buy-in and are part of it,
Right.
the greater success.
right.
Well, and it's an exciting celebration to look at how far we've come as a community, where we started, the history,
Right.
the people involved in all of it. Like I
Right, there's currently there'll be an email going out about this next week. We're setting up to your point about engagement, we are trying to involve residents in this. Mr. Daga, our former council person, has agreed to help head a citizens committee to do it, similar to the 75th anniversary. There was a former councilman, I've sort of taken my lead off of that, who headed that committee. There is a great deal of historical information available to us that we've already put on the website. It has not been advanced to the front page yet because it's still a little bit of a work in process. So we had engaged previously, some historians to help us research available materials. A lot of it seems duplicative of what occurred in the 75th anniversary. So I don't know that there's a ton of new information historically. We're not going to discover the source of the name of Pepper Pike. We're resigning ourselves to that. And there is
It's a fish, right?
it's a fish. And there is, if you want to peek as to some of the, it's not a finished piece, but if you go to the residence page on the website, we have sort of a beta version of the beginning of what the website would be. That'll get advanced to the front page with a link. And right now, there are just a lot of fun old police photos. And, but there are a lot of other, there are photos that go back to the 19th century of Pepper Pike.
There's a great resources at the library who have all the historic maps from turn of the century, last century. In fact, I got one and put it over my mantle, and it shows, Orange High School way back in 1920 in place.
Yes, we
And
discovered this.
I mean, it'd be a great amendment to show, here's a map from 1900, here's a map.
And that's one thing, in fact, we've discussed doing with some of these photographs, then and now, sort of thing. And, yeah, Tony.
I recall that 12 years ago when we all first, the three of us first came on, were elected, that Bruce Akers shared with us a lot of historical material. And I believe I still have it. It might be of some value to you, but I haven't looked at it in 12 years. So
Yeah, no, and I do have, but I'd appreciate just to make sure I haven't lost anything.
Yeah, I believe I still have it.
I think most of it was photocopies of things that we have. It was very generous of him to.
Yeah,
We not share it, but yeah, we did. And it's really interesting, in our end of the year email where we invited residents to we want residents to have fun with us a little bit, and to, if they have a house that's a century home, we already have one resident whose house is actually from 1830s.
Wow.
Who,
Where's that house?
2 century.
that's on Pine Tree.
Huh.
And I've been to the house. It's an incredible home. And it used to be the way station for the circuit preacher, I think, as it came through. And there are just lots of old historic things that we should do. I'd like to do some sort of cemetery initiative. I'm going to let the committee come up with some things, but some of the things that we've come up with, we're going to be doing a revised city logo that celebrates our 100th. We might have we're going to continue to scan photos for the website. We're working with the Pepper Pike Club, which also has a 100th anniversary this year. And they've actually invested a lot of time into, they have a great archive, well beyond our archive.
Well, the alumni association.
And a lot of those people were, the prominent people who lived in this immediate Pepper Pike area back then. So we're meeting together and we're going to share information so far as that. So we'll benefit by their wonderful efforts. We're going to have Fun Fact Fridays where we'll push out to people, sort of silly fun facts of historic Pepper Pike they may not know about. This Friday's is a real fun one. And that'll be the first one. We're going to have a speaker. There's a well-regarded history professor. We're going to bring him in to arrange a community thing to speak of the history of this area. But it's not all about history. It's fun to understand and celebrate the history, but we also want to have people have fun just with current Pepper Pike. And so we're going to do a time capsule, things like that. Have a special party that I'm not planning, someone else is. And we'll, it seems that the ice cream social may be the best free community event thing to bring people to for that sort of 100th birthday party, because it's kind of a birthday party itself with cake and ice cream. And we don't have to charge people, and I don't want to have to charge people to come just to celebrate the event. We may do another ticketed event later in the year that I'm not ready to roll out yet for anyone's consideration. That would be sort of a winter event as we bring things to a conclusion. And, but again, the committee can deal with a lot of this stuff.
And I want to mention that the schools are also having, I know that there's some dates that are being.
I know, we're already having to bounce our dates off each other.
Good,
Yes.
so that you're aware of that.
And I just wanted to mention that the Alumni Association is also a wonderful
Huge
resource.
Yeah.
Of the history, and while all of it is not applicable to Pepper Pike is the largest community in the district, and they have a lot of information and an archive of really interesting alums going way back.
There was a wonderful oral history that the AV department did back in the first decade. It was like a 2005, 2006 video that they did. And I need to, we're working to try to get a hold of that. Because I'd like to get Stanley and Hope were on that. And then there were a lot of really old-time Pepper Pike residents.
I think I might know who, someone in the community that was his job, so he might be the person.
Yeah.
Who, I can talk about that.
Yeah, they used to run it on that TV channel all the time.
Yeah, and yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they're still in the community.
Yeah, so
In
they're,
Pepper Pike.
oh, really? All right, so I'd like to get a hold of some digitized version of that, so we could put it up. And there's just a lot of fun things, so thanks for asking that.
Thank you for the explanation.
Just a quick request for next meeting.
And merch, we're gonna do merch.
The calendar's great online, but I think we should probably talk a little bit about future calendar dates for meetings, because Labor Day is being booked for Planning Commission, and then Christmas, Hanukkah Day is a council meeting, so if we can shift that in the future.
Kathy, I will add to that, in listening to our previous discussions about some conflicts that we've had with holidays and whatnot, I actually typed it up, and I have a document that I was, I kind of wanted to run past everybody, because I did see a few conflicts with our calendar. I didn't know how far we wanted to look out, and maybe it's something, I know it's getting late. I can maybe I could send this out or send it to Sheila. You guys can review, and maybe we can discuss, and I don't know if we're allowed to plan alternate meeting dates, Steve, if that's something that's an okay thing to do. Like, if we know we have one on Christmas Day, we know we're not gonna meet that day. Do we choose a different date in December to just, maybe move our special meeting up a week, have our regular council meeting the week after, and we have that set? And if we don't need to meet twice, we're
Your
good?
regular meeting is set. I
Okay.
mean, and special meetings can be called as needed. The way you have it set up now, and I was talking to somebody about why it's this way, it's not easy to explain why because it doesn't make any sense. We originally went with the work session on the first meeting that we have, the third Wednesday of the month. And then the actual regular meeting is the fourth Wednesday of the month.
Right.
We call a special meeting and put things on an agenda so we can get some work done at the work session. But you're not going to change. You can cancel the regular meeting, but you're not going to change a regular meeting date. Anytime you pick other than the regular meeting date is going to be, by definition, a special meeting day.
Right, but we could have two special meetings.
Absolutely.
And that would, because I think by charter, we are required to meet once a month. So we would cover it, and everybody could prepare for it as well. That if you wanted to take a vacation that week or something, that we would that we would know. So I'll send this to Sheila and push it out. So thank you for bringing it up, Kathy. I'm tired, so I forgot about it this evening.
Thank you for doing
So
that.
thanks.
I just want to say real quick, thank you to everyone. I've talked to a lot of you, I've had such a warm welcome on council and from all the department heads I've talked to. And I'm super excited to be here, and I think we're gonna do some really cool stuff. So thank you very much.
Great to have you.
Thank you.
Audience, anything? Sure, go ahead.
I'm Aaron Sachs. I'm a resident in Belgrade. I'm excited to see the item on here for the Belgrade sewers. I know a lot of my neighbors, we all eagerly awaiting the sewers. In addition to the sewers, we're hoping it could have a positive impact on some of the stormwater, because that road does have some localized flooding. We have a number of neighbors that are impacted quite often from stormwater. I think that some of our neighbors have reached out to council person Centrock also. We have pictures if that's of help to council at all. So the sooner that project could get done, we would be pleased with that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, William Thompson, Providence. I apologize for comments at the late hour, but, this is the time. I have to make some blunt remarks, and I apologize in advance. I have to say, as a resident, I'm disappointed. I'd even go so far as to say a little embarrassed at what I'm seeing tonight. The phrase I would use is, good things don't happen when you don't listen to your lawyer. Imagine you have a friend that's getting legal advice in there, and they sat down and say, well, how would you advise that person? Dude, listen to your attorney. Because I think we're very fortunate to have a very capable, objective, impartial person like Mr. Byron here, and just blatantly flaunting the advice very quickly. I'd like us all to think about, I don't want to resurrect sidewalks, but the word due diligence came up so many times, and why we're talking about it again and again and again for years, and how quickly this surfaced against in no uncertain terms, very strong advice not to pursue that. How quickly that happened, that stinks. Like from an optics standpoint, I'm saying as a resident who didn't have much interest in local politics prior to 6-9 months ago, something smells. I think of it like, as we're talking about this at home, I'll use an odd analogy. It feels like wanting to buy a flamethrower just in case you might need it. Because you make the argument, well, I'm probably never going to use it, but man, if I want a flamethrower, I'll be darn glad I have one in the house. And what's the risk? The risk is, as stated in no uncertain terms, you have a flamethrower in the house that could be misused. Could easily be misused. Even if you trust good intentions from people sitting on the body right now, you can't comment on what's going to happen with the next group of people. But oh, cool, I have a flamethrower in the house. Well, it must be here if I'm allowed to use it. And despite any promises to not use it, and I'm not hearing what the problem is, without showing historical need of like this happened and this happened and this happened, and then we tried this, and this. Let's just buy a flamethrower and keep it in the house just in case. It just doesn't sound right. And the extent that we're pushing back so hard, I'm gonna wrap this up, I promise. Pushing back so hard on, again, Mr. Byron's very sound, impartial advice. If I'm honest, it strains credibility to suggest that we're not itching to use the flamethrower as soon as we get it in the house. It does not hold water sitting here in this chair. I'm glad that we talk about that council is responsible back to the city as a whole. That's great. Okay, and I'm gonna challenge you, prove me wrong, because these sessions are recorded. And the first time that flamethrower that I'm using gets pulled out of the shed and used, I promise you, the noise on that is going to be very, very, very high. You'd better be very, very sure that you need to use it. And the second time is not going to be better. And everybody here is as I said in a third town hall, an elected official. You put the flamethrower into the house, I'll, don't have any choice now, but to just trust that you're gonna use it responsibly. But it very bad from an optics standpoint, so that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Anyone else? Yes, Vera.
I'm Vera Barter Savage, 29600 Shaker Boulevard. William, I want to echo what William said. I want it on the record that I am very disappointed at this council as a resident, not following our law director, our mayor, and our law professor here is super disappointing. I don't know what the emergency was, why it had to go through so quickly. Mr. LeMay, back in April 2022, didn't want to, he voted no for sidewalks. And then he
That's false.
explained,
It's false.
no, it
That's a
isn't.
lie.
I have it in the notes. It says nay. You voted nay against not the sidewalks, but the trail. So, excuse me, it was for the Gates Mills Trail. No different for trails, the same thing. So, you know, that was dragged on. This was pushed through and you wanted to make a vote tonight. What was the hurry? What is the emergency? I don't understand it. So I'm done.
Anyone else? All right, at 11 o'clock, another each heard. We are adjourned.